George. I'm running for Brooklyn DA this year. To those of you that don't, do you mind if I stand up? Do whatever you like, right? Can everyone see me back there? Is this on? Okay. For people that don't know me, I'm a first generation American and a lifelong Brooklynite. My parents came to this country via India. Very humble, modest beginnings. My dad had 5 brothers and sisters. My mom had 3 brothers and sisters. No one in their respective families had ever made it past middle school. Through education, my parents broke the cycle of poverty. My dad not only made it past junior high school, he became a dentist. My mom became a nurse. And she was the driving force for getting us here to America. Went to public school Thank you so much. Went to public school right here in New York City my whole life, NYU undergrad, and I broke my mom's heart when I decided to become a lawyer when I went to Hofstra. It was in law school that I decided that I wanted to pursue a career in public service. My mother had worked for Coney Island Hospital for over 30 years serving the public. My dad had worked for that same hospital for close to a decade. I thought being a prosecutor would be the best way to give back. In 2004, Robert Morgenthau, one of the greatest prosecutors in the country, hired me. I spent 8 years in that office, and mostly concentrating on violent crime. I was assigned to a citywide drug task force combating narcotics crime in the 5 boroughs. I worked in a specialized gang unit within that same task force, going after gangs that were involved in narcotics activities. Spent 2 years working on cold case homicides, and I spent my last 2 years in the generalized trial division focusing on violent crime, on robberies, assaults, and shootings. I left because I saw a great disparity happening here in Brooklyn. Manhattan was light years away from what was happening in the Brooklyn DA's office. What did we see on the ground? We saw a Brooklyn that led the city in homicides and shootings, and a DA's office that was allowing failed policies such as stop and frisk and the over-prosecution of marijuana cases to lead the way. We saw wrongful convictions happening at an alarming rate. Guys like Jabbar Collins spending 16 years in jail for a crime he didn't commit. David Ranta spending 23 years in jail for a crime he didn't commit. And what did we see a few weeks ago? The DA is investigating 50 cases which are accused of being wrongful convictions. And just last week, we find out that our DA is running Guantanamo Bay-style detention centers right out here in Brooklyn, imprisoning civilian witnesses to make them say what they want to say. What else? Yeah. Political corruption. He didn't go after his buddy Vito Lopez. Why? Because of a friendship. That's wrong. He's not going after child pedophiles because it would cost him votes. Absolutely. Folks, that's crazy. We need to change that. And that's why I'm running. Folks, I don't think it's a question of whether or not you're going to re-elect Joe Hynes. The question is, who are you going to elect to be the next district attorney? Ken Thompson or myself? I respect Mr. Thompson very much, but I don't think that he's got the best qualifications for this job. If you're talking about political corruption, I think there's one outsider in this particular race. I'm the only political outsider in this race. Mr. Thompson has represented the state senate, guys like John Sampson, Pedro Espada, and others, to block investigations from the government. Mr. Thompson is running to be Brooklyn DA, the chief state prosecutor, and he's never had the experience of working in a state DA's office. Folks, it's not about comparing and contrasting and criticizing this office. What are my plans to take Brooklyn DA's office in the 21st century? Well, we need to advocate an intelligence-based approach to fighting crime. We can't just stop and frisk away our problems. What we're talking about, I worked on a case while I was in Manhattan, this citywide task force called Noble Drew Ali. It was 380 housing units, only 100 of which were legally occupied. We had different units of the police department working there. Gang unit, narcotics unit, the precinct, detectives, people on the ground. And there was an information failure that was occurring there. HPD came to our office and asked us to fix a problem that was in Joe Hynes' backyard. We spent a year in this development. And this was a place that if you had a 911 call, you'd need 3 cop cars. Children weren't playing in the street. After about a year of taking that intelligence from the various different units and coordinating them in the right manner, we were able to develop a case that indicted over 30 people and turned the project around. This is a place now where children are playing, where there's a community center, things that didn't exist before. And that, to me, was one of the epitomes of why I wanted to be a prosecutor and why I want to be Brooklyn DA. What else, folks? Well, we've got to reform stop and frisk. Our DA has said that he can't tell a 23-year-old rookie cop what to do. That's not his job. He thinks that's Ray Kelly's job. That's ridiculous. It's up to the chief law enforcement officer of the county to say whether or not stop and frisk is wrong or right. We have to tell police officers that they can't racially profile. They've got to follow the law. And a big piggyback to justifying stop and frisk for a long time has been the possession of marijuana. Because if you don't find someone with a gun, when you find marijuana, you pull it out, put it in plain view, and say you committed a crime. We've got to change that. We've wasted $100 million on marijuana prosecution. It's done nothing to bring down violent crime. DA, day one, I'm going to decriminalize marijuana. If the police arrest someone for marijuana in plain view, which is a crime, I would say that the highest charge that we're going to do is a violation. We've got to change our laws. No condoms as evidence. This was an interesting practice here. We had against the continuation of stop and frisk where people were stopped, condoms were being pulled off sex workers and others, and people were being charged for prostitution. It was only recently that Mr. Hines came out after I wrote an article in the Village Voice that said he agrees that he's not going to use condoms as evidence. Folks, we need a cyber crimes and identity theft unit. It's the fastest growing crime out there. He doesn't have a unit. We're backwards in the Brooklyn DA's office. We need to reform wrongful convictions. What's my platform? Well, we need to revamp this conviction integrity unit. A good portion of the office's resources need to be dedicated to fighting wrongful convictions. We should have double-blind lineups. We should have access to DNA data banks for those that are convicted of crimes. Why are we opposing if someone's sitting in prison and wants access to a DNA database? Let's give them access. What if we have a reason we had someone sitting in jail for 23 years and he actually may be the wrong guy? Why are we blocking that? Folks, we're looking for a common sense approach to how we're going to turn the office around.
30 seconds.
Don't just look for the candidate with the best resume, quote unquote. Don't just look for the guy that's handling the high-profile cases. Look for the guy that's actually been on the ground for the last 8 years, seeing how a state prosecutor's office is run. Look for a guy that's the political outsider. Because if you want to stop political corruption, you've got to get a guy that's outside of the machine. Look for the guy that's actually got ideas, that's got concrete plans of how he's going to bring about reforms. Not just criticizing Mr. Hines, but what are your plans? And I submit to you that after you look at all those things, that when you go to the booth, you're going to vote for Abe George. Thank you so much.